Hey guys, what's going on? Hope you all are having a great day, and welcome back to the first episode of the Fourth Quarter Podcast, a daily sports podcast covering all kinds of sports content from across the world. And now, obviously, we're going to start our first episode with talking about last night's Game 2 in the Madison Square Garden between the New York Knicks and the Cleveland Cavaliers, where we saw Josh Hart put up a career-high 26 points. He absolutely caught fire, especially in the third quarter there, guys. Josh Hart looked like the Knicks' best player last night. But obviously, the Knicks had a crazy comeback win to win Game 1 in that series, and that was by far the Cavs' best chance. I think, I'm not going to say it's going to be a sweep, but it does look like through 2 games already that the Knicks are just by far the much better team. Their depth is just insane. I really think they have one of the best rosters left in the entire NBA. Obviously, that makes sense, but obviously, the way that the Cavs have been playing this series is just kind of confusing because obviously, James Harden and Donovan Mitchell, two very high efficient level scorers, they just haven't been able to give you much in terms of playmaking this series. And it's in Game 2, Donovan Mitchell and James Harden combined for a total of 3 assists, which is just unheard of for those two, especially for those guys' style of play. And if you guys remember in Game 7, against Detroit last series, Donovan Mitchell made it a very key point early on to emphasize getting assists to his guys like Allen and Mobley. I think he finished with at least 10 assists that game. He had 1 assist last night, which is pretty bad. And obviously for James Harden, who a lot of his game involves, getting others involved, he only had 3 assists last night, which is, not really good for him. And also Cleveland's bench had just been playing pretty inconsistent. And you got a guy like Sam, I almost called him Sam Wade. I believe Sam Merrill, a guy who's been shooting lights out this whole regular season, has honestly struggled this playoffs, especially this series. He went 0 for 7 last night. It's just not good for them. He 0 for 8 last night from 3 from Sam Merrill, which is pretty bad for the Cavs. And also, obviously, Kenny Atkinson made some pretty mismanaged some plays. My fault there. In Game 1, I thought he held on to his timeouts there too long, especially in that first game. I'm like, bro, you see the Knicks going on a run after run after run, and even the Knicks players are like, look, are you going to call a timeout? Nothing. He just let it play, and I think it got way too out of hand. At that point, it's like, bro, you got to use your timeouts. But anyway, that was Game 1. Game 2, I don't think he used his bench enough this whole playoffs, but I look at a guy like Jordan Tyson, a guy who played very well the regular season and was a key contributor for this team down the stretch here in the regular season. He's barely sniffed the floor in this playoffs. I just don't get that. A lot of times coaches, I think, overthink this playoff minutes where also a guy like Keon Ellis, who's played key minutes for the Cavs, just hasn't really gotten many playoff minutes. And I'd say, hey, look, man, I think you kind of desperate down 0-2. You got to try some new things out. And I think they definitely got to use Jalen Tyson more in Game 3. Maybe even make him a starter. I don't know. I expect him to get more. He should definitely get more minutes in Game 3. I'm a little confused by some of these moves by Kenny Atkinson so far. But again, the Knicks, I don't think it's crazy to say the Knicks right now look like the best team by far. I mean, especially obviously in the East, but between San Antonio and Oklahoma City, those teams both look pretty good. But the Knicks, ever since that loss against the Atlanta Hawks on the day of the NFL draft, and both, by the way, their 2 losses have both been, I think, by 1 or 2 points. So, just 1 or 2 baskets deciding those 2 losses for the Knicks. It's crazy. I think the Knicks are, playing some of the best playoff basketball they've played in a long, long time. Since got most of these Knicks fans thinking about the early 90s there, 1994 to be exact, with John Starks and Charles Oakley and those guys, of course, Patrick Ewing back in the day. But anyway, guys, the Knicks, these guys look pretty good. It's going to be tough going into Cleveland. The Cavs fans are going to be playing with some desperation there. They obviously need to win bad. But, I think the Knicks are by far the best team in this series. And it shows that last night, Jalen Brunson did his own, dropped 26. I don't think he had 26. He had like 21, but still, they don't need Jalen Brunson to carry them. They have guys like Josh Hart that can carry load, and I've also been impressed with this postseason with OG Anunoby. I think he's been playing absolutely amazing. Karl Anthony Towns has carried a lot of the weight offensively this series, especially last series, but again against the Sixers. But this series he's played great, so Cleveland's got a tough couple games ahead of them if they want to get back in this series. But also, again, I'm looking at Kenny Atkinson here, man. Got to make some more adjustments. I would just I'm kind of a little concerned with this bench play for Cleveland because also if you're not going to play any of these guys in the playoffs and then you're going to throw them in there Game 3, it's like, all right, bro, they haven't played any minutes in the playoffs. Again, I'm looking at Jordan Tyson, Keon Ellis, and even also Thomas Bryant. But one more thing I'll say about Cleveland is I've been very impressed with the first 2 games of Evan Mobley this series. I thought he's been playing very well and knocked out a bunch of threes, but also they need a bit more from Donovan Mitchell and James Harden. They need these guys to play like they have been playing their whole careers. And especially Donovan Mitchell, he can get you 50 any night. I wouldn't be surprised if Donovan will go for like 30-plus there in Game 3 in Cleveland. But still, I need more out of James Harden for this if we want the Cavs to have a shot here in this series. Now, moving on here to another topic that's rather unfortunate here for me. Diehard Orioles fans, you can tell here from Baltimore, the 4-0 here, guys. Now, the Baltimore Orioles, as we stand here today on May 22nd, 2026, 8 games below 500 and currently in last place in the American League East. Now, I'll say this. As we were getting ready for the season to start, I didn't expect the O's to be the best team in the American League. I expect them to certainly be competing for the AL East. I think, obviously they made some moves this offseason. You could argue not enough, but the Pete Alonso signing, I think that should certainly move expectations for this team a step above than what it has been. Again, and still, this team, it seems like the biggest problem with this team is just the players aren't prepared and developed as the way they necessarily should be, it seems like. Now, that does seem like it comes down from the minor league system, okay? Stemming from all the way down to these lower levels of AA, single A. It's just the Orioles, the players that come up don't seem prepared for the major leagues, and that is not necessarily their fault, if that makes sense. But also, guys, I just think the Orioles rely way too much on the analytics. And one of the most frustrating things for me as a fan is every single day I feel like their lineup is just flipping in and out. They're flipping guys in and out of the lineup. Like, I just think they got to build some consistency there. I still think, they have one of the more, it's kind of scary now, but they certainly did have one of the most talented young cores in the major leagues now. I think you look at a team like the A's, how they have just kind of not even gone through their phase of being like really bad at building their players, and now they're one of the best teams in the American League. The Orioles had their kind of push a few years ago, but you hope that that wasn't their sort of peak with this team. You hope that they can still kind of build off of that success. Although I don't know if you call it much postseason success, because this team has not won a playoff game together. They have not won a playoff game since 2014 against the Detroit Tigers, who we'll get to them. We are playing them tonight. Actually, Game 1 is tonight in Baltimore. But the Tigers are another team that are very similar situation to the Orioles this season, where they are at a position where they find themselves, last place in the AL Central, about 8 games behind the Guardians. They just got swept by the Guardians, who the O's just got swept by the Rays. So, both these teams, the Orioles and Tigers, both need to win badly. So I think we're both going to see these teams playing with some desperation. I think we're playing at a point, it's a point where it's early in the season to see some desperation, but obviously the Orioles don't have really, there's nobody coming back to save them. I mean, Jordan Westbrook, I love the guy, but he's not coming back for a while. Jackson Holliday will be back in the lineup, but respectfully, I just don't know if he's done enough to make him say, okay, this guy's going to be enough to help us win more games. And obviously the biggest, issue, but the guy we need to get going the most is obviously Gunnar Henderson. This guy sets the tone. I think our offense goes the way Gunnar goes. And I mean, obviously, another thing I'll say about the O's is if you guys watched the postgame on Masson, Ben McDonald went off a couple of nights ago about the analytics. I've been saying this for a couple of years now. I do think Mike Elias, who's a great guy. Listen, I love Mike Elias. I met him a few times in person, shook his hand. I told him, Mike, you've done a great job building this team. That was in 2023. Now the pressure's on Mike, and I think he relies too much on the analytics. I really, really think he needs to take a step back and just let the guys play the game and kind of crumble up your analytic formula and just kind of focus on actual baseball a little bit. Sometimes that's what we want to see as fans. A little bit of too much on analytics I feel like is not good. That's where we are in the issue we are now, where you kind of have guys just kind of like, I don't know, Kobe Mayo. It's like, what do you do with this guy? I really like Kobe Mayo. I'm a huge fan of these guys. I just don't necessarily know what the plan is for these guys. Now, anyway, the Orioles, still very much so early in the season. They are not out of the wild card hunt at all. Now, the way Tampa Bay is played, it looks like they're going to probably be the favorite to win the division now, obviously, but the O's are still in it for the wild card. Don't count me out here. And I do expect the O's to still be, fighters here. They're not going to go down, man. I do expect them to also be, maybe looking to make some moves here. I don't know who is available right now. I mean, you could look at a couple guys across the league. I mean, starting pitching is probably the biggest need. I mean, last thing I'll say about this, I do want to get to the game tonight, but guys, Shane Baz, he pitched pretty well recently, but a bit surprised with it's been about surprising to me with the Orioles is kind of how they spent their money, right? Obviously, Pete Alonso's great signing. I love it. He's been a great fit for the Orioles, the great culture. We needed him for our culture, but Shane Baz, I don't know, but somewhat of a confusing move, but he has looked good some rather recently. But before the last couple games, he's been kind of up and down. It just makes me wonder, like, why are you trading 5 players and then signing him the $60 million contract when you could get a guy like, I don't know. There's other guys out there I think maybe you could target. Like, I look at a guy like I don't know. It's hard, but if you could possibly swing for a trade, like, I'm trying to think of the guy from the Mets. Freddie Peralta. I'm not saying we didn't. I would have liked us to maybe target a guy like that if we're gonna make a big trade. It's okay. It's okay. The Mets got Freddie Peralta, but the point is the Orioles are making moves. It's still early, but the moves have been better. But it's just kind of about how they spend the money and how these players are getting developed. Because again, you just kind of see, especially some of the errors they've made this season defensively, and it's just like, bro, where are they learning this stuff? And it's almost like, if you guys saw the double steal on Thursday's game against the Rays, I want to say, maybe Wednesday's game, that shit's, excuse my language, that's inexcusable. And that's like some little league stuff. You just don't see that in Major League. So, but anyway, yeah, we got a big series against Detroit Tigers coming up tonight. I expect both teams to play desperate, like I said before. The Tigers have lost not 8 in a row, like 6 in a row. We've lost, I think, 4 in a row. So I expect both teams to be pretty desperate tonight, but, expecting a big game tonight. Also, Game 3, Oklahoma City at San Antonio, Game 3 of the Western Conference Finals tonight. Looks like Dylan Harper and De'Aaron Fox will be out again for the Spurs. That's tough for them. Obviously, this is the first game of the series in San Antonio, but I think in Game 2, the Thunder kind of figured out putting Hartenstein on Wemby and kind of him being physical and really pushing and being physical with Wemby. Like I mentioned before, Wemby's still kind of, I'm not going to say he's weak, but he's not as strong as he will be one day. So I think he can still get pushed around by the right guy. So getting Hartenstein on him, I think, can make things difficult for him. And especially if you take, Fox and Harper off the team, that's tough. But also, I look at Keldon Johnson and Devin Vassell to have big games tonight for the Spurs off the bench. And also, obviously, Stephon Castle, one of my favorite players to watch in the NBA, Stephon Castle, absolute stud. He's had a lot of turnovers this postseason, especially this series, but if he can limit the turnovers, I think the Spurs have another shot here to win. But, look for SGA to get going early again. You guys saw Game 2. Shea got going early, really early. Hit a couple jumpers there and got in rhythm early. But anyway, guys, thanks for watching. This is the first episode of the Fourth Quarter Podcast. Like, subscribe, and follow for more, guys. See y'all tomorrow. Thanks. Have a great weekend. Go O's.